today's going to be about the 8th Commandment, part of the 8th Commandment this week, part next week. This week it's going to be about truth. What is truth, truthfulness, lies. But before I do that, I want to mention something about the gospel today, because Father was talking about the liturgy. He didn't get a chance to get into the gospel. That particular parable, I know that when I was a kid, I totally misunderstood that parable. And in all the classes that I had in school, the kids totally misunderstood it too. So I think I want to go over it. It'll only take a few minutes, and today's lesson's a little short. So you have a man going out into the field hiring workers for the vineyard. And he goes in the early morning because he wants to get a lot of work done, and that was the way it was done then. You went to this town center and you hired everybody was looking for work, was walking around there, and you hired them. And you arranged with them for how much you would pay them, and then if they agreed to the wage, they went off to work in your fields. So the owner of the field got there early and he hired some people. And he arranged with them how much he would pay them for the day. Now, the translation today said a penny, and actually that's not the way it's translated in the Bible. I think it's a denarius or something like that, which is really more than a penny. You think of him hiring these guys to work for a whole day for a penny, sounds like this is really unfair labor practices. But he actually hired them for more than what the going rate was. He was paying them a generous wage to work in his vineyard for the whole day. So by today's standards, I don't know what the minimum wage is now. I know what it was when I was your age, but then we can't go by that. I want to say it's probably $10 an hour now? Maybe 12? Something like that. So let's say he was going to pay them $20 an hour. It was more than fair by the standards of the time. So yeah, he hired, that was fine. And so they went off to work in his field. And he came later in the morning, about mid-morning, and there were still some other people standing around who hadn't been hired. And he said to them, well, why are you still standing? He said, nobody hired us. He said, okay, I'll hire you. I'll pay you what's fair. They agreed to it, so they went off and he came back again around noon, and then 2 o'clock, and then 4 o'clock, and let's say they were going to quit around 5, so around 4 o'clock, there's still a few people don't have a job. So he says, go, I'll go to my field. So he hired them. They only worked an hour. The guys they had hired at the beginning of the day worked 8 hours. Some of them during the day worked 4 hours, some maybe 6, depending upon when he hired them. So at the end of the day, they all line up. But they line up in order, the guys, the newest guys were first in line, and the guys who worked all day were at the end of the line. So he gives the first ones in line, he gives them $20. They only worked an hour. The guys who worked 3 hours, he gave them $20. He went down the line and gave everybody $20. Well, the guys at the end of the line who worked all day, they figured, well, he's paying the guys who worked for an hour $20, he's probably going to pay us more. But when he got to them, he gave them $20. And they grumbled and complained, and the owner says, what are you complaining about? We agreed that I would pay you this. I'm not cheating you. Or are you just jealous because I'm generous? I gave them more than they earned. Are you just jealous because I'm generous? Now, when I was a kid, I thought the guy was being unfair, but I didn't realize that he was being generous with them as well, because he was paying them more than the regular wage. And the whole moral of the story is that this is what we're going to get. God has agreed with all of you. You come and work in my vineyard, and you will get what? You'll get to heaven. You will get to heaven. And it doesn't matter whether you've been a Catholic from the very beginning of your life, or you're not baptized until your deathbed, you get the same reward. You get the same payment, heaven. That's the moral of the story. Regardless of how long you work, our Lord is being generous with you. Yes, the guys who spent their whole lives working for the church, in the church, hopefully they've lived a really good life, and they have made a lot of merit. They still will get into heaven. The same with the guy who repents on his deathbed. He will get into heaven. Now, there is a little bit more to it than that. You get the same reward. You all get into heaven. But there are levels in heaven. So you will not all get the same level. But you'll still get there. That's the point. You'll get there. However, there are, front row seats, and there are nosebleed sections. I would be really happy if I just get in the nosebleed section. I will still be very happy just to get there. So I don't mind if, as long as I get paid the same amount as everybody else, I want to get in, that's good. All right, so today, now we have actually everybody here now. Still missing some boys, so what is truth? This was a question that Pilate asked our Lord. When our Lord stood before Pilate, Pilate said to him, "Are you a king?" And Jesus said, "I am a king. For this was I born, for this I came into the world, to give testimony to the truth." He didn't come into the world to be a king. That's not what he's saying. He came into the world to give testimony to the truth, to bear witness to what is true. Everyone that is of the truth hears my voice. And Pilate said, "What is truth?" Pilate didn't hear his voice. Pilate wasn't of the truth. He didn't hear his voice. He didn't know what truth was. And we might look at that and say, well, that's kind of ridiculous. Who doesn't know what truth is? And yet there are really a lot of people who have misconceptions about what truth is and what is a lie. What makes something true and what makes something false. So that's where we have to start, is what is truth? Truth, in order to have truth, you have to have knowledge. The two are connected. The mind possesses knowledge of things as they actually are. That's truth. When your mind sees something the way it actually is, no more and no less. You're looking out the window and you see a cow. And if you see the cow as it actually is. If you see it and you think that it has two tails, you're seeing more than what's there. If you think it only has 3 legs, you're seeing less than what's there. The truth of the thing is what is actually there. So, truth is therefore based on knowledge. The two go hand in hand. You can't have truth without knowledge. And the knowledge has to be true knowledge. Knowledge can be considered limited or adequate or inadequate. In other words, do you have enough knowledge? Nobody can have all the knowledge. That would be to be God. God is all-knowing. We, however, our knowledge is limited. You can look at that cow. You can tell me how many spots it has. If you're on this side, you may not know how many spots it has on the other side because you can't see that right now. You don't know whether it's sick or not just by looking out the window at it. So your knowledge is always limited. It's limited to what you can see, what you can know. We consider it adequate when we have enough knowledge for the purposes at hand. I don't need to know whether a cow is sick or not if I'm planning, to let's say I just want to butcher it. Now, it might be good to know if it's sick with something that might make me sick if I kill it. So, but knowing how many spots it has, I don't need to know that if I'm going to butcher it. So the number of spots on the other side of the cow, opposed to what I can see right here, I don't need that knowledge. But you do need to know whether it's sick or not, because especially if it's something that would affect me if I'm going to eat it. So the knowledge is adequate if it's sufficient for what the purpose, for what I need it for. If it's not sufficient, then it's inadequate. Remember the boys we talked about a long time ago about the boys with the sled? You know, the pond, they were all going to go skating, and they were debating about how thick the ice was. And so those boys looking at that pond, they had inadequate knowledge. They didn't know how thick the ice was. The only way they could find out how thick the ice was, and we were saying that what you know, just because you have an opinion on something doesn't make it true. The boys who thought it was an inch thick, that was their opinion, but that didn't make it true. What does make it true? You have to find out. So the boys looking at the pond don't know whether it's true or not unless they either find out from somebody who's already skated on it that day and tells them, oh yeah, it's thick enough, it held me fine. In fact, I dug a hole in the ice and it's 5 inches thick. That would give them correct knowledge, sufficient knowledge. So we have to know, sometimes in order to know something, we have to look further, because the knowledge that we have is inadequate for what we want to use it for. But why is it important? Well, sometimes your life depends on it. Those boys went skating on the pond thinking it was only an inch thick. Let's say the boy told them it's 5 inches thick, and they went skating on the pond and fell through. Their lives would be in danger. They placed their trust in that person who gave them that information, and the information was wrong. It wasn't true. Truth is important to us because it's important for our lives, our well-being, and our happiness are all based on truth. We can't be happy unless we know things. You know that your employer isn't going to fire you. You know that you have a job tomorrow. You know that your husband is going to bring home a paycheck. You know that you're going to pass this test, or that you did pass this test, and you know what you're going to get on your report card. Truth is important to our lives. Sometimes your life depends on whether something is true or not. Your well-being, if you ate that cow and you got sick, again, your well-being is based on the truth. Well, he was certified by a veterinarian to be disease-free. If it was not true, your life could be in danger. Your health could be in danger. And certainly your happiness would be in danger, because all of your family might get sick. So truth is a very important thing. And we refer to God sometimes as God is truth. Because again, God knows everything. He's all knowledge. He's therefore all truth. He knows the truth about everything. We require truthfulness of others in order to acquire knowledge for ourselves. You trust your teachers when they teach you something. You trust your doctors when they tell you, you take this medicine and it will make you well, or you need this operation in order to get well. You trust the pharmacist is giving you the right pills. We go through life on a daily basis, trusting a lot of people, believing in their word. we don't question every single thing. And the truth that we have, for example, a doctor, how did that doctor learn medicine? Another doctor taught him, and he believed what that doctor taught him. And you, when you're in school, you accept the things that your teachers teach you, and you will go out and use it and maybe find other truths. You will discover a new medicine, or you will discover a vaccine that may actually work. Or, by the way, Father was right about the COVID vaccine, but I really recommend that no woman under childbearing age have the vaccine, because the doctors, what I read on the internet, the doctors were saying that a very similar vaccine to this one was used before, and it's made women sterile. So truly don't and they say, why would you want to? It's an experiment. You are part of an experiment when you get this vaccine. It has not been thoroughly tested, and not tested on human beings, except the guinea pigs who are taking it now. So let all the other people take it and let them find out all the things that are wrong with it before you take it yourselves. Let them experiment on other people. Don't let them experiment on you. Besides, as Father says, it's not in the case unless you have a very serious immune deficiency problem where if you got COVID you might die, which is like, I think the people in the most categories is 99.8% of the people will survive it, and in that one category, it's 5% of the people will survive it. It's a little bit higher, more mortality rate in that particular area. But even still, that's a high rate. That's very small amount of people. So most of our knowledge is based on truth, and truth is based on knowledge. And the knowledge that has been given to us, the truth that is given to us, we live our lives on it. We don't question it until somebody tells us a lie. And then we begin to question everything that they say. So when men set out to harm others, they usually set out a plan of deceit, lying, or broken promises. And you find this a lot in government, deceit, lying, and broken promises. Why? Because politicians like Pilate, they don't really know what truth is. They're not out for the happiness, well-being, and life of other people. They're out for themselves. And therefore, what is most beneficial to themselves? And that's why they don't have a problem with lying. So, God commanded us to love our neighbors. And it's because of this command to love your neighbor that he made the 8th Commandment, a mandatory obligation on our part, because truth is so important. And it also forbids us to do anything that would give error in the place of truth. So what exactly is a lie? There are 3 parts to a lie. A lie is the saying of the opposite of what is in your mind. That's the first part. Saying the opposite of what is in your mind for the purpose of deceiving to one who has the right to know. If one of those parts is missing, it is not a lie. So let's take a look at the parts. the opposite of what is in your mind. Let's say you witnessed a car accident, and you described to the policeman exactly what you saw. And yet somebody else over here also saw the car accident, and they didn't see it the way you did. Does that make you a liar? No, you told exactly what you saw, what was in your mind. You weren't maybe from the same angle as they were. To you, it looked like the bicycle, ran right out in front of the car, where when they looked like it was from a different angle, the car actually moved into the bicycle. That doesn't make you a liar. You told what you saw. You told the truth as you saw it. It's just that your truth was inadequate. You didn't lie. Likewise, if you tell, let's say some kids, let's say you're taking a test, and you're sitting next to another child, another teenager, and he looks over at your paper, and you think he's copied he copied from you, and you tell the teacher he copied from you. Well, he didn't. He just looked at your paper to see if it was okay to start. He saw that you'd read or where to put his name on at the top, and he wasn't looking at your answers. He was just looking to see whether you'd already started doing the test. So you told the teacher the way you saw it, but it wasn't the truth. If you told the teacher that he didn't copy the answers, and he actually didn't copy the answers, that would be the truth. But you thought that he did copy the answers, and you told the teacher that he didn't, just so that he wouldn't get in trouble. Now you are lying, even though it was the truth that he didn't copy your answers. But in your mind, you thought that he did. You're telling the opposite of what is in your mind. For the purpose of deceiving. And generally that's why we tell the opposite of what is in our mind. That's usually the purpose for any lie, is to deceive. Sometimes though, people tell things, say things, and they think it's a big joke. They say it as a joke. For example, to the poorest player on the team, you say to your friend, yeah, he's such a great player. They're all looking for him to join the NFL. You know that it's not true, and everybody else knows that it's not true. It's a joke. It is the opposite of what is in your mind. You know that he's not NFL material. And it is for the purpose of deceiving. And it is to one who has the right to know. But the actual purpose is not really deceiving. The actual purpose was to tell a joke. A poor joke. And most of the jokes where a lie is involved are usually poor jokes. It's called sarcasm. And sarcasm is not a very high form of humor. It's, I think, one level above a pun. To one who has the right to know. In other words, the person that you're telling this lie to has to know the truth. It's important to them to know the truth. They have some sort of authority. This includes policemen, magistrates, your parents, religious superiors, confessors. They all have the right to know. You should never, ever deceive them. However, the nosy neighbor who comes over and asks you how much money your father makes, she has absolutely no right to that answer. And you could tell her your dad makes $1 million and you wouldn't be lying, because it's none of her business. Now, there's better ways to do it than actually telling her an out-and-out lie. Of course, if you told her your dad made $1 million, a month, she wouldn't believe that either. It's called hyperbole, it's exaggerated. The best way to deal with and if you told her, I don't know, that also wouldn't be a lie. In society, that is the normal answer to a nosy question, I don't know, and society accepts that, not that you don't know. Society understands that when you say, I don't know to a question like that, what you mean is, it's none of your business. That's how society interprets that, I don't know. So that wouldn't be a lie, because it isn't any of her business. But even if you did tell her your dad made $1 million a month, or a year, or whatever, it wouldn't be a lie, because she has no business knowing that. But again, the best way to deal with a nosy person like that is answer a question with a question. How much money does your dad make? Why? Do you want to hit him up for a loan? Guarantee she's going to move on. Answer a question with a question. They're looking for information, but they never want to give any information. Those kind of people. Now, there are 3 types of lies. There are injurious lies, lies of convenience, and jocose lies. Jocose lies were like the football player joke. Jocose comes from the word meaning joke. A lie meant as a joke. And generally, those lies they're not sinful. They're lies, but they're not sinful. There's no sin involved in them, because they're meant as a joke. However, if the lie does do harm, then it can be a sin, usually a venial sin. It is really serious harm. And with lies, whether it's going to be mortal or venial always comes down to how much damage does the lie do. Serious damage is going to be mortal. Not serious is going to be venial. Injurious lies, the first type, are almost always mortal because they injure. Lies of convenience and jocose lies are usually either a venial sin or not a sin at all. So, injurious lie is exactly what it means. It's a lie that causes injury. The boy who tells the kids who want to skate just because he wants to see them fall through the ice because he thinks that would really be funny, that the ice is 5 inches thick when it's only ½ an inch thick and they fall through, that's an injurious lie. That would be a mortal sin, because somebody would get hurt. And even if nobody got hurt, it would still be a mortal sin, because somebody could have been seriously hurt. Most of the lies we tell, however, fall into the second category, lies of convenience. We tell lies because the truth would be too inconvenient. It would be embarrassing. We would get punished. People would think badly of us. It might cause us time or money or whatever. We tell lies for convenience sake. And these are usually, as I say, usually venial sins. But they're still lies. And they're almost always a sin. There is no such thing. Lies are not color-coded. There are no such things as white lies. I know people consider, what is a white lie? A white lie is usually considered a sin that, I saw somebody recently refer to it as a no lie. No, it is a lie. They consider it a white lie because nobody gets hurt by it, and you're doing it to try to, so as not to embarrass the person. There are other ways of not embarrassing someone without having to lie about it. For example, a friend of yours comes up to you and she's wearing a dress that makes her look fat. and she asks, how do you like my dress? Now, somebody using a white lie would say, oh, you look fine, because you don't want her to know how really bad she looks in the dress, that it makes her look so fat. But there are other ways you could tell her that would be more helpful to her. For example, say something like, you know, if that dress, if the lines on it went up and down, it would make you look much thinner. You're not saying that she'd look fat, you know, you're just saying it would make you it would be more attractive if the lines went the other direction. Or you could say something like, well, the color really brings out the color in your eyes. You're not saying that it's making her look fat. You're saying it does make something part of her look more attractive. She still looks horrendous in it, but yeah, but it really does make your eyes look good. Or you could say something like, why don't you, you know, or brings out the color of your skin or whatever. But you want to, at least those kind of comments would be helpful. You know, or ignore the dress entirely and change the subject to something else, you know, like, where did you buy it? Or, you know, Now, there are times when you're put into a corner where you almost have to tell a lie. And the question is, for example, let's say this is like World War II Germany, and your next door neighbor is married man, and he has a family, and he's Jewish. And you're out in the street, and you see, and the German police came up to you, and and your neighbor just came running past, and he's hiding from them, and he says, "Don't tell them where I am," and he runs past, and then the German police come and they say to you, Did you just see a man go past here? Now, they're in authority. They have a right to ask the question, and they're entitled to an answer. But if you tell them, the man's life is in danger. You know what they might do to him. So you give what is called a double meaning answer. And in this case, using a double meaning answer is not a lie. You tell the police, I didn't see a single man. Why is it not a lie?
It wasn't just one person?
No, it was one person. Yes?
Because he's married.
Because he's married.
Oh, married, okay.
He was married. What you mean to them is, I saw a married man. I didn't see a single man, but I'm not telling you that I saw a single. The answer to the truth in a double meaning answer is in the answer itself. It's there. The person has to look for it, but it's there. There is truth in it. The other situation that you can use, that when you're forced into a situation where you have to say something and you don't want to lie, is called mental reservation. Let's say a group of boys robbed a grocery store, convenience store. And one of the boys is a Catholic boy, and he goes to the priest and he tells in confession that he robbed Mr. Murphy's grocery. Later, Mr. Murphy is suspicious of the boys. He knows these boys who live in the neighborhood. And he's suspicious that Joey was one of the boys who robbed his store. And he goes to he knows that he's a Catholic boy, so he goes to Father Murphy. He asks Father Murphy he knows anything about the boys who robbed this store. Now, Father Murphy can't tell anything. He can't in any way give any information that might put any suspicion on the boys, because the information he had, he heard in confession. The seal of confession will not allow him to in any way say, he can't just say, yeah, I know something about the boys, and not say anything about Joey. Because if he says anything at all, it would confirm the grocery store owner's idea that these boys were involved. So he can't in any way, can't give in any information at all. That's how important the seal of confession is. That would throw any suspicion on the boys. So if he says to them, so he says to the man, Father Michael said that he knew nothing about it. I don't know anything about it. What he means, in his mind, what he's thinking is, I don't know anything about it that I can tell you. Not that he doesn't know anything about it at all. I don't know anything about it that I can tell you. But he doesn't say the I can tell you part. He's not saying, he's saying, not saying the opposite of what is in his mind. He's only saying half of what is in his mind. That's called mental reservation. Now you have to be very careful about mental reservation, because there are certain times when you should never use it at all except in a very serious situation. And then you may not use it to someone who has the right to know the information. For example, teenagers may not use mental reservation against their parents. If your father asks you, do you smoke pot, you can't say, no, Dad, because, and say no, Dad, out loud, and mentally think, until you catch me, or, because you haven't caught me. You cannot use mental reservation like that. Your father has the right to know, so you may not use mental reservation against him, nor against policemen or anybody else who has the right to know. Unless someone's life is in danger, unless something like the seal of confession, some sort of promise that's required of it, that you have to keep the information secret from someone in authority. That's the only time when you can use the mental reservation. So be careful about it. So you can't use it without sufficient reason. We can only use it to conceal a secret we have the right to keep, or to shield others from harm. Those are the only times when you're allowed to use it. The difference between mental reservation and double meaning answer is, again, double meaning answer, the truth of it is in the answer. With mental reservation, the truth of it isn't in the answer, because you only told part of the answer. But the person can figure out the truth from, if they take it further. It's contained not in the answer, but in the circumstances. If the shopkeeper had thought about it a little while, he might have come up with the idea, well, he's a priest and he can't really tell me all the information. You had your hand up?
Yeah, so would it be a sin if, your mom baked a batch of cookies, right, and she had it on the counter, right, and then you went in there and you took one and you put it in your pocket, and she asked you, did you eat one of the cookies? And you said, no, I didn't eat one of the cookies, because you didn't eat it, but it's in your pocket.
You didn't tell a lie.
Okay.
You didn't tell a lie. You're still guilty of stealing, but you didn't tell a lie. Yeah, truth is, again, it's, she had the right to know, but you were not saying the opposite. You were giving her exactly what she asked for. If she asked you, what happened to the other cookie, then you would have to tell her, it's in my pocket, or you can't say, I don't know.
I mean, could you answer, if she said, what happened to the cookie, could you say, I didn't eat it? I mean, could you still say that? 'Cause, I
You
mean,
did say, I didn't eat it,
so
yes.
it's technically-
Again, you're right, I didn't eat it. That would be truth, that would be the truth. It's sort of a double meaning answer, because, again, you're not supposed to use double meaning answers against those in authority, but again, and this is also in the venial sin, no sin category, probably, because it's a cookie. But where you say, I didn't eat it, that's a double meaning answer, meaning, I didn't eat it, but I did have something to do with it.
Plus, you're not honoring your mother and father.
Yep, that's true too.
Breaking that.
So you're breaking a few commandments here. 4th, 5th, but you did break the 8th.
Not mine.
Yes.
What if you did eat the cookie?
Pardon me?
What if you did eat the cookie later?
So what if at the time you weren't, lies do not work that way, at the time when you were asked, it hadn't been done, so you told the truth. Now, if your mother asked you after you eat the cookie, in the evening, are you sure you didn't eat any of those cookies today? Then now you have to, well, yeah, I did, later.
Were you gonna
But at the
answer?
time, you didn't. All right, so there are a certain number of things that the society accepts as, within social norms, as that you can say that are not considered lies. Again, as I said, when you tell somebody, I don't know, somebody being nosy, I don't know, society accepts that as meaning it's none of your business. That isn't a lie. Another time, again, and I mentioned this in another class, is if you're in a court of law and the judge asks you, are you guilty or not guilty? You are absolutely guilty. You stole this guy's wallet. You're absolutely guilty. But the judge asks you, are you guilty or not guilty? You are not lying if you say not guilty. Why? Because in this country, that means society accepts not guilty, meaning I am not guilty until proven guilty. So when you say not guilty, what you're saying is I'm not guilty until you prove me guilty. You're not really saying I didn't do it. What you're saying is I didn't do it till you prove that I did it. Also, there are certain things like when you could write a letter addressed to your worst enemy and write, dear so-and-so. What they call Dear John letters. The girl's breaking up with the guy. She says, Dear John. She's about to break his heart, and she calls him Dear John. It's just a salutation. It doesn't mean anything. And the same thing with an invitation. You get an invitation from your worst enemy, let's say you both work in the same business, and she wants your job, but she's having a party for all the business people at her house, and so you receive an invitation. You are cordially invited. She doesn't really mean you're cordially invited, but that's the way invitations are written. And you write, and in your reply to her, RSVP might be something along the lines with, I'd be happy to attend. You're not going to be happy at the attending, but that's what you say. You're not lying. Those are social norms. And using those social norms is acceptable behavior. You find it in the books of etiquette, and that's permissible because they mean other things, than what you say. All right, keeping promises. We are obliged to keep promises made to another, provided The promise doesn't require us to do something sinful. You can never make a promise to do something sinful. And provided that the other accepts it as a promise and depends upon you to keep it. They make you promise. Now, if they're making you promise something sinful, you do not have to keep that promise. You may not keep sinful promises. You're not allowed to keep a promise that's sinful. The sin in itself negates the promise. So before you make a promise, you should investigate what it is, that the person wants you to do. But again, lots of times we make promises and we don't know what the future holds. Does that mean you have to keep the promise afterwards? You made the promise now. Is there no way to get out of it? Yes, there are. If before we keep the promise, promise becomes, let's say you haven't fulfilled the promise yet, but now the promise becomes impossible or exceedingly difficult or sinful or just plain useless, then you don't have to keep it. So, for example, the circumstances change. So the one who foresaw the promise, let's say you promised to donate $1,000 to a charity, and then you lost your job. Circumstances changed. You don't have $1,000 now to donate to the charity. You can't donate it because your family would go hungry. You can't fulfill that promise. Now, if your circumstances change again in the future, and you actually, get a better job or whatever, and there's money again, maybe you could fulfill a promise at that time. But let's say you promised to give them $1,000 before the end of the month. That's not going to happen. You can't fulfill that promise because circumstances changed. And those circumstances make it impossible for you to fulfill the promise. Sometimes it becomes useless, impossible, or even illicit to fulfill the promise. Let's say you promised to go on, let's say it's 1943, and you promised to go on a pilgrimage to Lourdes. Europe is at war. You can't fulfill that promise. It would be dangerous to do it. If you make a promise and the person that you promised, they die. You don't have to fulfill the promise unless it was included in the promise that their heirs were included. Let's say you promised to give them $1,000, and if anything happens to him, you would give it to his children. If the guy dies, you still owe it to his children. And of course, if the person you make the promise to releases you from it, you're no longer obliged to fulfill the promise. You go to them and say, hey, look, I know I promised to do this, but I really can't do it, because it's going to hurt my family, my job will be at stake, whatever. I just can't do it. I feel really bad about it. And they say, okay, I understand. That's fine. You don't have to. You don't have to. He released you. But, so be really careful about making promises. I know kids are really great at promising each other things, but words are important. It goes way back to some of the original religion lessons, the importance of words. So be careful when you make promises, because you will be obliged to fulfill them. And, kids are really good at saying, I'm going to tell you something, you got to keep it secret. Okay, fine. No, but you got to promise me. You got to promise you won't tell anybody. Okay, fine, I promise. You have not promised. And then you hear, and then the person tells you something, and you think, what in the world, why did I promise? This kid, he's planning to commit suicide, and I promised not to tell anybody? Or he's planning to rob a bank, and I promised not to tell anybody? This makes me complicit in his sin. Can you break that promise? Yes, because you cannot promise anything that's sinful. And you are now complicit in his sin. His life is in danger. You have to break that promise. And you need, it would, at this point, probably, well, if he's planning to commit suicide, you probably need to tell him right now, I can't keep this promise. I know I promised I wouldn't say anything, but that was before you told me you were gonna, your life would be in danger. I can't keep this promise. About the bank robbery, I don't know that I would mention that to him because he might just kill you so that you don't tell anybody. Wait till, afterwards, let him find out. So, if nothing excuses us from keeping a promise, then we have, in a certain sense, told a lie if we break the promise. That's why, because we promised to do something, it was in our mind that we would do it, and now we're not doing it. We're doing the opposite of what was in our mind. It's an action, as we're putting in a lie into action. And would it be mortal or venial sin? It would depend again on how much injury is involved. If it's a minor matter, it would be, like telling your mother that, you got to promise not to tell mom, so, okay, I promise, and then you find out, really, that's something mom needs to know. Yeah, I know I promised, this is going to be a venial sin. If it's serious matter, it would be mortal sin. If breaking the promise resulted in serious injury or something serious, it would be a mortal sin. We're talking about breaking the promise. But again, if nothing releases you from it, and again, if the thing itself was sinful, that would release you from it. We're assuming that what you promised was not in itself sinful, but by breaking the promise, something serious resulted from it. Then it would be a mortal sin. Again, with lies, as with most things, it depends upon the injury, how much injury comes from it. Whether it's mortal, venial, or no sin at all. Next time, we're going to continue with the 8th Commandment. We're going to talk about reputation, because this is only the lie part of it. There's more to it. The 8th Commandment is, thou shalt not bear false witness against thy neighbor. There's more to it than just telling a lie. Bearing false witness is more than just telling a lie. People's reputations often come into the 8th Commandment. So we'll go over that part of it next time. So, any questions besides the ones I've already answered? Any more hypothetical situations? Yeah.
Well, okay, so what did you call it? Confessional?
Seal of confession?
Seal of confession. Is there any time that he can break that?
No, never.
Not even if he can save 1,000,000 lives?
Not if he could save 1,000,000 or his own life. And there have been priests put to death because they would not break the seal of confession.
I bet.
Yeah. There was a particular king who thought his wife was unfaithful to him, and he went to the priest, the confessor. I can't remember what saint that was, and asked him, what did she confess? Did she, I can't tell you. He said, well, and he had him tortured, he still wouldn't tell him that he killed him. He would not break the seal of confession. And I think the worst part of it was, the wife wasn't guilty. The wife was not guilty of betraying her husband. The husband was just plain jealous. And the priest died for nothing. Well, he died for the seal of confession, but I mean, in the case of the wife, there was nothing wrong. But even though she wasn't guilty, he couldn't tell the husband that. That would be breaking the seal of confession.
So that would be breaking the seal of confession if she didn't, if he said she did not.
Either way, he could not say one way or the other. He could make no comment on it at all. And by the way, for the most part, priests they really don't pay a whole lot of attention. They hear so many sins all at a time. And yes, they know who you are. They can tell from your voices or whatever, but they really don't associate you with the sins. They get into a way of thinking that it just goes like in one ear and out the other. They don't, afterwards, if you were to ask them, and you could ask them, what you told them in confession, they probably couldn't repeat it to you.
Could he say
Good.
this? All right, so the terrorist walks in, he's planted a nuclear bomb in the Capitol, he confesses it, he says he's sorry for it, he tells him where he planted it, and he leaves. Can the priest tell the authorities there's a bomb planted so-and-so?
No.
Not even that?
No.
Okay.
Nope, not even that. Hopefully he told somebody else. He seemed to be so glad about it. Yes?
Back to the part where you said something about the World War. What happens if a Jew was trying to get away from the Nazis, and then the Nazis, and then the person that's running away from the Nazis asked, ran across. Well, if the Jew was running bypass a man, and then the Nazis, and the Jew told him where he was hiding, and then he said, "Don't tell the Nazis where I'm hiding," and then the Nazis asked him where he was hiding, and he had no family. The Jew didn't, and the Nazis asked the man who knew where his hiding spot was, "Where is the Jew you just saw?" Would he be able to? Would it not be a sin if he told him he did not know where he went?
And he knows where he went. He does know where he went. He knows where he's hiding. Technically, the people in authority have the right to know. You'd have to figure a way to give him some kind of answer that would satisfy him, that would be the truth, without,
I mean, in a case like that, wouldn't
where someone's life is in danger.
couldn't you think about it?
You're not allowed to,
Couldn't you be sorry for saying, like, for
you want to commit the sin, it's only a venial sin, and I'll tell him to confession tomorrow, right?
Exactly. I'm sorry for committing the sin you're sorry for, but you're not sorry for lying to him to save the dude's life. Like, you're sorry that you actually committed a sin.
You could look at it that way, but it's still a sin, and yes, it's still a sin. And what is your question?
I forgot.
You forgot.
Well,
It is still a sin, and you have to understand the nature of sin itself, whether it's venial or mortal. You want to look at it and you say, well, it's just a venial sin. Venial sin is still a terrible sin. Yes.
All right, I remember.
You remember now.
So what if they saw that you saw him, but they asked you anyway just to see, and then you told them no?
Then they kill you.
Well, you're gonna
Then even though they take you. I'll tell you a situation rather similar to that. Clara Tenboom wrote a book called The Hiding Place. And in it, her family hid a lot of Jews from the Nazis and they were very good Christians. They weren't Catholics. They were very good Christians. And her sister-in-law was so opposed to telling a lie, that she would not lie. And they were in the house, and there was a place under the table where there was a trap door. And so they hid the Jewish people down in there, closed the trap door over, threw the rug over, put the table on top of it. And the Nazis came in, and they were walking around and, checking the house, and they couldn't find anybody. And they asked the woman, she said, where are you hiding them? And one of the children was, again, they've been raised not to tell lies. She says, "You're so stupid, you don't even know that they're under the table." And the Nazis said, dumb kid. Because you could see under the table, there's nobody under the table. And so they went away. And they didn't discover where the Jews were hidden. But she told the truth. But she told the truth because a lie was, to tell a lie, even though it was to save someone's life, was so abhorrent. And she truly believed, and she was justified in that God would protect them if she told the truth. And she did tell the truth, and God did protect them.
And she called him stupid.
Yeah, she got to call them stupid too. Yeah, you're so stupid, you don't even know they're under the table. So again, you put your trust in God, and He will defend you. You have to understand, again, I understand your situation. You'll say, well, you're going to save a person's life. You are not allowed to commit a sin. A sin is such a horrible thing. The nature of sin is so horrendous. Even if it is only a venial sin, it's still so horrendous in the sight of God that you may not tell you, for the sake of your own life, you cannot commit a mortal sin. Whether, I can understand the wishy-washy feeling about it if it were a venial sin. But for a mortal sin, no. Your soul is more important than your body. Your soul is more important than anyone's body. And if you truly understood the nature of sin, and unfortunately we don't, but if you truly understood the nature, the horrendous nature of sin, no matter whether it was venial or mortal, you would not want to take part in it. Was Dominic Savio's motto death but not sin? He meant any sin, mortal or venial. Death but not sin. Rather die than commit a sin of any kind. But then that's what makes him a saint. The rest of us, we're willing to, oh, well, it's not so bad. I'll go to confession tomorrow.